I'm Agent S.
And I'm Agent M.
And together, we're S&M. Okay, so today we're reviewing MIB 3.
Yes.
Yes. So we both saw this movie.
Yes. I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny. I mean, granted, it story plot wise, it was a very, cookie cutter cut. You know, we knew right away. You knew exactly what's gonna happen, next, and whatnot. But I still enjoyed it. It was hilarious, and that's the only reason why I think you would probably go see it anyways. Will Smith is just such a funny person. I mean, he has his serious roles, but then he has his awesome roles. So,
well,
yeah.
He mostly tries to do the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air thing, and he kind of tries to do it in this movie, as he's done in the previous installments.
Yeah.
You're kind of right, because our expectations for this movie were kind of really low after the second one. Especially after the first one was kind of really good. I enjoyed the first one, but I hated the second one. This one, I kind of agree with you. It's a little bit better. I like the casting choices. Josh Brolin as young K was phenomenal. He actually looks like he would age into Tommy Lee Jones. It was perfect.
It was perfect.
Especially when I saw it in trailers. They're just like, that works. It's great. Who's the guy who did that? Decided that? He's a genius. But you're right. It's as soon as they get into the time travel thing, especially in the third installment, you gotta kind of expect it's gonna be.
I was actually surprised they did address the racism issue, which I was not expecting that, because the jokes were going around before the movie came out, haha, have fun going back there, Will Smith, lol. But yeah, they actually did address it in the beginning of the movie. As soon as he goes back, they're like, oh, that's not a fun time for you people, lol, exactly that joke. But but it makes it, then it falls apart, because at the end you have Will Smith. Spoiler if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry. You do have a black person who's actually in NASA, right? He's in charge, and that doesn't make sense. And then you find out he's Will Smith's
giant continuity error.
Yeah, it's just
right there in your face.
It's
and they don't even hide it.
Yeah, especially because he does get arrested. He gets arrested because he's he not get arrested. He gets pulled over because he's black and stuff like that. Oh, haha, yeah, racism jokes. But then you have this
They also kind of do the racism without actually saying racism. When he's trying to explain to the guards about the whole situation, he basically explains to the flat, and already all three of them are on the ground.
Yeah.
It was pretty hilarious. You kind of expected it, because that scene that I just talked about was also in the trailer, so you kind of knew they were probably going to touch on it. I think they did it more than we thought they were going to do.
Yeah.
Because it's not really something you should point out in a movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and they did it blatantly, too. It wasn't
I think they just, I think it kind of went to their attitude of this movie. It's listen, this is number 3, people aren't expecting much, whatever.
Yeah.
We're just gonna, there's no more rules to this thing, we're just gonna, I mean, they already kind of changed it up with the fact that they have to do young K now, because Tommy Lee just cannot do the action scene.
Yeah.
He can kind of point a gun, but I mean, you kind of saw it in the action scene in the bar when they just do the tussle with all the aliens. It's he's not keeping up with Will Smith, which is actually kind of one of the reasons I like the first movie. It's because they actually touched upon that. He's jumping over rails, Will Smith, and Tommy Lee's just casually walking down the stairs, just casually. And yeah, it was a really good undertone to that whole movie, because it's I wasn't training a partner, I was training a replacement. I need someone who can do what I used to be able to do, which is kind of where the next two kind of fell apart, because Kay's back, and
he's still there,
and he's still the most respected and most feared human out of all the aliens, because he's so no nonsense, and he's been doing it for 40 years. It is kind of, like I said, it's not as what I was expecting, because I was actually also a fan of the MIB series, too. Mm-hmm. I love that series. And that was a much better interpretation of K and J and all them, because it had all the same elements. Jay's still the rookie, he's the young gun. It's almost like a different interpretation.
What was weird, though, is that they credited Justin Bieber and Lady Gaga, but they're not even in the movie. Thank God. If they were in the movie, I'd be so upset. But it was literally they're not in the movie. It's they show clips from their music video or something like that. Something so small and subtle, and it's just I wouldn't even have noticed if you didn't even credit them. So it's just why are you credit them? Why are you crediting them on IMDb of all places?
Well,
Make me upset for no reason.
That kind of throws two things. One, I don't think they did that because they knew it wouldn't have worked. I think they did that just because they couldn't afford those two.
Yeah.
And that was more of a throwback to, once again, the first movie when Jay's being introduced to the fact that a whole bunch of celebrities are, aliens. When you see, like, all the clips and you see, like, Sylvester Stallone is, like, that was the first one I picked out, was Sylvester Stallone's an alien. And then, of course, you have in the second one, it's like Oprah from Chicago. Maybe landed in Chicago.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Kind of makes sense.
Well, that's why they used Andy Warhol, which is like someone who's old, and obviously you can't have the real one there.
Well,
and then they made him an agent, kind of undercover. Again, spoiler. But yeah, but it's like, he's so, and that actually made me really upset because I studied art in school, and I'm an artist.
I actually studied photography with Andy Warhol, and he was like a big thing with like what he did, because what he did was like so new and fresh.
And that's,
despite the fact that it's been imitated over and over again.
They were mocking it in the movie, like, it's just so like, it was all a joke, blah, 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 look at these art people taking everything too seriously. I got so upset at that. Like, I hate it when people do that.
Yeah.
Like, it just really gets under my skin because it's already hard enough for us to be taken seriously to begin with. And, then there's those pretentious artists, I understand that they exist, but that doesn't represent all of us. All of us are just trying to achieve something, right?
That's a very vocal minority. It's kind of like trolls on the internet.
Yeah,
trolls
exactly.
on the internet don't represent the vocal majority of that community of people.
Yeah, so when they did
they just
that,
happen to be the loudest.
Yeah, so, like, MMB had a lot of stuff like that where it kind of made me upset. But, like I said, overall, I did enjoy the movie. I wouldn't go out of my way to say, oh, that movie's so bad. I understand that it wasn't great, but I can enjoy it, and that's all I'm giving it credit for,
I give it 3 meh out of 10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
just
give it, like...
Or 3 meh out of 5, sorry, because it's a bit better than 3 out of 10.
Yeah, it's like, whatever, Yeah.
But it is like a meh movie.
Yeah.
You could have all of the wealth controlled by 1% of the population. You could say you had free elections, but the whole thing's rigged. that sort of thing.
And I think one of the best points was, like, he was like, you guys could have, like, all these